Welcome back to the Late Night Review, and tonight I wanted to review what I think are the five scariest horror movies of all time. And these are my personal choices as the five scariest horror movies of all time. This is not a ranking of the best horror movies of all time. This is not a ranking of the greatest horror movies of all time. And this is not a ranking of my favorite horror movies of all time. If it was a ranking of my personal favorite horror movies of all time, the list might look quite different. So this is just what I think are the scariest. In the interest of full disclosure, I don't get scared by horror movies. Even when I was a kid, I didn't really get scared by horror movies except for a few. And I'm going to talk about those tonight. There was only a few that ever got to me, especially the ones at the top of the list. It's only five I'm going to be talking about tonight. If I did a top 10 or 20, there'd be more. But I never really got scared too much by horror movies. That's one of the reasons the list is kind of short. And these movies don't really scare me now, but when I was a kid, these stood out. And number five and four never scared me a whole lot, but the top one, two, and probably three, definitely top one, two, and three did scare me as a little kid. And so this is just what I think are the five scariest horror movies of all time. For just my opinion, and this is not my top five favorite horror movies. This is not the movies that I think are the greatest or most well done or the best horror movies of all time. So coming in at number five, and this might surprise some people because usually it's number one, The Exorcist. The Exorcist is coming in at number five, and when I was a kid, it scared me, but it was more disturbing and off-putting than it was scary and interesting. And a lot of people put this at their number one. I personally was never very scared of The Exorcist Part 1, but it is scary, and I recognize it is scary. And there's certain parts in it that I always thought were scary and thought-provoking. It's one of the most disturbing films, especially for that time. The subject matter, this young girl being taken over by a demon or by demons. The priest, Max von Sydow, Father Marin, said there's only one, but just that concept is very disturbing. And then some of the dialogue, some of the stuff she says and does, and all that stuff, and it's very, very disturbing. And I always thought it was well done and well directed. I always like Jason Scott Miller. I think he does a great job as Father Karras. He's one of those actors, just to talk about him for a moment. And also, I just want to say this. I really like Exorcist. It's a classic. I respect it. But Exorcist 3 is my favorite of the whole franchise. So if this was a list talking about my favorite movies, Exorcist 3 would be ahead of The Exorcist. Exorcist 3 is my very favorite Exorcist movie of the franchise, and in fact, any Exorcist movie that's out there. I love George C. Scott. I love the way it's done. I think the performances in there are very, very good. Brad Dourif. And I think Jason Scott Miller did a great job too. Jason Scott Miller is one of those guys where he doesn't have to do much to make his point. He's got that kind of face where it's very intense and powerful, where he only has to do a little to have that body language and have a message come through. And I've seen him in a few movies, and he's always done a good job. There's a movie called The Nickel Ride. It's not a horror movie, totally different from this. That was good. And some other movies. He played a priest in this one movie, and I think he was, I forgot the name of it, but it was a good movie as well. I've seen it. He played a priest, and it was a totally different type of movie. It's a drama. But yeah, he's a really good actor. I think everyone in here does a good job. Linda Blair, obviously, especially at that young age, how she can act so convincingly. And then, of course, Ellen Burstyn. This is one of the all-time classics. It's my number 5. It's in 5th place. And in real life, it was, when I first saw this as a kid, I've always believed in the possibility of demon possession. I've always believed that people could be possessed by demons. But at the time when I first saw it, I didn't know that it was inspired by a true story. And in real life, it was a little boy, not a little girl. A little boy, and they tried to protect his name. They tried to keep his name secret, so they called him Robbie. But he was rather close with one of his family members, female family members. I think it was either an aunt or a grandmother or something like that. It might have been an aunt. They used to play with the Ouija board all the time. And then she died, and that devastated him. And I think he got on the Ouija board, and that kind of opened the door for this demon possession to take place. And so it was inspired by true events, which was, that makes it even more scary. At the time when it first came out, though, I didn't know that backstory. But I already believed in demon possession, so it did scare me as a kid, but just not a lot, not like it did other people. And it's my number 5 scariest movie of all time. And coming in at number 4, a movie that scared me a little bit more than The Exorcist, which was when I first heard about it and when I first saw it, I thought it was a true story because of the beginning. I'm talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, directed by Tobe Hooper. At the beginning, it talks about how it was inspired by a true story. And, being a kid, I believed it. I thought, wow, finally my dad rented it for us. My friend stayed the night over, and my friend was from Texas, good friend of mine. We watched the movie. My dad sat in the chair, and my friend and I, when the movie was getting ready to start, we decided to sit on the floor. And he's from Texas. He told me he heard about it too. He never seen the movie, but he heard about that guy. He said, when I was a kid, I didn't want him coming into my place, our house. And so what we did was we got a baseball bat, we got some weapons and put them on the floor in case he came in. Our imagination kind of got carried away with us, and then the movie started. The film which you are about to see is an account of a tragedy. And I think John Larroquette, actually, that was his voice that they used, if I remember right. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, it's an account of a tragedy, and it sounded so authentic and real. And of course, years later, I found out that it was inspired by Ed Gein in part. Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was inspired by Ed Gein in part. But this movie, when I first saw it, wow, true story. This guy coming in, wearing that flesh mask, a leather face. It did get to me. It scared me a little bit more than The Exorcist. The way it was done, the realism, the way he took people out, how he did it, and the way that they died. It did get to me as a kid. And I saw it, and it was exhilarating, disturbing, scary. And in the first one, he ran after you. And in other ones, he ran after you too, but I think he was actually fastest in the first one. And how he was chasing Sally at night through the forest and through those, I think there were mesquite trees, and he was chasing her, and he was right behind her. I remember we showed this to my uncle once when I was younger, and he said he'd run so fast that fire would come off his feet. But yeah, this is number 4. This is number 4, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I think it's still the scariest of the franchise. I saw some of the later ones. I enjoyed a couple of them not enjoy like haha, but I thought they were well done. I think the remake was well done, and they were good. They were disturbing, and so was the first one. They were all disturbing, but the first one I still think is the scariest. I still think the first one is the scariest. And even though nowadays I don't get scared by these movies anymore, but when I was a kid, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 and then Jim Saito. He would. Jim Saito was kind of an evil version of, kind of looked like Mr. Rogers and Jimmy Carter. A little bit Jim Saito, I always thought, so I always got a kick out of him, especially in part two. Sorry, Mr. Rogers and Mr. Carter. Sorry about that, but I always thought he was kind of a dark, demented version of those guys, or he looked like them, in a way, which is kind of nuts to say, but that's one of the reasons I laughed at him, especially in Chainsaw 2. Always liked Jim Saito, was perfect for the role. And Gunnar Hansen was perfect for Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1. And everyone in here was convincing. And it was done in like a documentary style, gritty look, which made it even more disturbing and realistic. Very, very, very well done horror movie. And it's my number 4, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. And coming in, and the top 3 might surprise people. And it might surprise that they're in order. And it might surprise people what they actually are. But everyone knows they're scary. Everyone knows they deserve to be ranked at least up there in the top 10 or 20 because they're scary. And these are the 3 movies that scared me, genuinely scared me when I was a kid. And I'm talking about, well, you'll see. Coming in at number 3, I'm talking about the final conflict, Omen 3, with Sam Neill. The Omen Part 3, the final conflict. This is still one of my favorite horror movies of all time. There's parts of it that I don't like, that are disturbing, that make me upset, actually, especially when they're getting rid of the children. I hate that part. Nowadays, when I watch it, I fast forward it. But what they were trying to do is go back to King Herod when Jesus was born the first time in Bethlehem, Ephrata. He was born, and they were trying to get rid of the firstborn. So that's what they were doing in here, calling back to what King Herod did. So they made Damien Thorne do that in here. And it was disturbing. Very, very disturbing. Makes me upset, but I still like the rest of the movie. I think it's well done. Sam Neill, I think, does a very good acting job. I've heard some people say that he really doesn't, but, and I respect that. I understand. Maybe he comes across as more like a theatrical portrayal of the character. Maybe he comes across as more of being on stage rather than on film in a movie. It might come across as theatrical, but I think he does a good acting job. I think that being someone who has studied cults in my life and studied different cultic leaders in history, he actually sounds like some of them that I've studied. And he actually sounds very authentic in terms of what he does and how he controls people in here. And plus, he's the Antichrist. Sam Neill's playing the Antichrist. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. I do think he does a good job in here. I think that it depends upon your perspective and your viewpoint on how acting maybe should be done. Some might think it's too theatrical. It might be too much like he's on stage rather than in a film. But I think it works. I actually think that he he acts similar to the way some of the actors acted in some of the Jesus movies that have been made, but it's the reverse. He's evil. I think he's very convincing as Damien Thorne, the Antichrist. And I think that he has the look. He does look like how you would picture Damien Thorne would probably look when he grew up, based on the other 2 films, based on how he looked in the first one and the second one. So Sam Neill fits that profile. And the score, the score in all 3 of the first Omen films. Omen 4, The Awakening, I think it's called The Awakening. I saw that when I was younger. It was one of the worst horror movies I've ever seen. Omen 4 should have never been made. It should have never been part of this solid franchise. I do think the Omen franchise is a solid one. And the remake is actually solid, even though I prefer the first one with Gregory Peck. much more. It's Gregory Peck is such a great actor. You can't really fill his shoes or replace him. But Omen 3, the final conflict with Sam Neill, how he portrays the character, how he talks to other people, ends up controlling other people. And the only complaint I would have is it should have been a much larger scale, because it is. And none of these Omen films really follow the Bible that closely. As someone who's studied the Bible for years, someone who's a Christian, someone who has studied prophecy, it's one of my favorite subjects for years, they don't follow the Bible very closely. But there's a couple things in the movies I think that they get right, and they're fascinating movies. They're the only movies that really, really scared me. I mentioned Chainsaw and I mentioned The Exorcist, which scared me some, but the Omen 1, 2, and 3, as a kid, because my God, what if you were him? What if you were chosen to be the Antichrist and you couldn't control it? You had no choice but to do that, and you didn't want to. But personally, I think the Antichrist will actually be content in that role. I think in real life, when he comes, he's probably already alive, I don't know, but when he comes, I think he'll be comfortable in that role. He might not look at himself as the Antichrist, but he might be very comfortable and believe strongly in what he's doing without knowing exactly how things are going to turn out. He might want it to turn out a certain way, but he might not know who he is, but he might suspect himself like to be as some kind of a savior figure, but he's doing evil. And I think you'll agree with what he's doing himself. But yeah, I think Sam Neill does a really good job, in my opinion. I understand some of the criticism, but I think it's just a matter of perspective. I don't really think the people who say that are wrong. I just think it's just kind of a point of view of how you should approach the character, and maybe how you should approach film instead of stage acting. But I do think that he does good, in my opinion. I think Sam Neill looks the part. I think the score is back, and it's really, really good. The score in all three of the original films are great. And yeah, it disturbed me and scared me as a kid. Omen 3. That's my number 3. Third scariest movie of all time. Again, this is not a list of the movies that I think are the greatest horror movies of all time, or even my favorites, just the ones that scared me as a kid. Coming in at number 2, and this is what I meant when I said this earlier, but Damien, Omen 2 is my number 2. They have to be on here because they're the only movies that scared me, really, when I was a kid. At least this much. Damien, Omen 2. And I think Damien, Omen 2 is a very, very good sequel. I think it's a strong sequel. I think that it has, if you like the first one, it has pretty much everything that the first one had, except it's focused a little bit more on gore in here, and then the kills and everything like that. But a couple things it doesn't have is, in the third one doesn't have too, is he's not a really little innocent looking little child. I mean, he's got, in a way, at the beginning, he's a teenager, and he's kind of got a little bit of an innocence to him, just a little bit. But that first one has something that none of the other ones had, and that is he's a young child. You see him as a baby, and he's innocent. But the scary thing about it is it's the Antichrist. It's a devil incarnate. But yeah, Omen 2, Damien Omen 2, it is hard for me to sleep one night after I saw Damien Omen 2. The scariest part to me in the whole film, and there's a few scenes that are scary, but the scariest part to me that bothered me when I was a kid, that scared me, is when they went to Egal's wall at the beginning in Israel. When Bugenhagen took his friend to see the wall that supposedly Egal, hundreds of years ago, Egal painted images of the Antichrist and his rise to power, like 3 or 4 images of the Antichrist from birth to downfall, how he looked as a little boy, teenager adult, and it supposedly took place hundreds of years ago. And it was made up for the film, but that concept that he took them down there and you could see these portraits of the Antichrist hundreds of years ago. And then it was Damien Thorne's face. It was the same face in the newspaper that he showed his friend at the beginning of the film before he took him down in there to that archaeological site. And the music, the score is so good. I think The Omen has one of the best horror movie scores of all time, if not the best, in terms of being scary. Again, this is not a list of my very favorite horror movies of all time. I mean, some of my favorite horror movies are like The Nightmare on Elm Street. Some of the entries into that franchise are Halloween. I love that franchise, or Friday the 13th. They would be in a list of my favorite horror movies. This is a list of my 5 scariest horror movies of all time, so it's different than my 5 favorite. But the 3 Omen movies are still 3 of my favorite movies. But Damien Omen 2, that part where they went down and looked at his face on the wall and it was him. When I was a kid, I had to sleep with the light on one night because I thought, my gosh, what if he was there? What if I saw him on the wall? And then I thought, gee, I better turn the light off because I might see him on the wall. I mean, I didn't really think that was going to happen. But, you can have nightmares and stuff. And I had a couple nightmares inspired by the Omen series. And like I said, these are the only movies that really scared me as a kid. Omen, the original Omen 1, 2, and 3. The Seventh Sign, that was another movie that was scary too, but it didn't get to me as much as the Omen series or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But yeah, Omen, Damien Omen 2, I think it's a solid entry. And William Holden is in here. Got actors in here. The guy that played Tom Cruise's dad in Risky Business is in here. And he dies a cruel death. He's William Holden's good friend. And he sees E. Gale's wall and he tries to warn William Holden. And William Holden doesn't want to hear it, doesn't want to listen, until finally he has not much of a choice anyway. He still has a choice, but not a really good alternative. And he ends up believing. And Lance Hendrickson, the great Lance Hendrickson, is in here, kind of watching over Damien. Plays one of the apostles of Satan, kind of in here, which that's a horrible thought, but Lance Hendrickson, what an actor, and does a really good job in here. And he tells Damien to read the Bible and find out who you are, Book of Revelation about you. Then he reads it. It's one of the best parts of the whole movie. Goes into the bathroom with a mirror, looks and sees 666, and then he breaks down. Why me? He runs off and just he thinks and he says out loud, why me? Why did you choose me? So that part got to me too, why me? And it made me think, my gosh, what if you were it and you didn't have a choice? But like I said earlier, I think in real life, he's going to really believe in what he's doing, and he's not going to have that kind of, at least in the scriptures, it seems like he's very content with what he's doing and what he's going to do. But really good movie. To me, one of the best horror movies of all time, and scary, Damien Omen 2. Coming in at number 1, and you probably guessed what it is. It's the original Omen with Gregory Peck, directed by the great Richard Donner, he also directed Superman with Christopher Reeve, the first one, and then mostly the second one. He did most of the directing for the second one. He directed the Lethal Weapon series, Lady Hawk, Radio Flyer, I believe he directed that. The movie that a lot of people haven't heard of, which is a good drama. But yeah, the first Omen, the first movie to have that brilliant score by Jerry Goldsmith. I believe it was Jerry Goldsmith. Excellent, excellent score and an excellent movie. The Omen, the original Omen. Gregory Peck he's such a good actor. It's almost impossible for him not to do a good job. He's got that look and that presence and the dialogue like a father figure. He's someone that looks in control, does a good job acting. And Lee Remick plays his wife. And she was in a pretty decent movie I seen with Montgomery Clift years ago. But yeah, she's always been a good actress. And Gregory Peck, I think he's perfect for the role. Oddly enough, Richard Donner didn't really, I don't think Richard Donner believed that Gregory Peck was going to accept the role, but he accepted the role despite the fact that his son in real life killed himself not too long before the filming of The Omen, before he was in The Omen. And Richard Donner thought that he might not accept it because in The Omen, at the end, you're going to have the father attempt to kill his own son because he finds out he's the Antichrist. So he thought, he's probably not going to accept. But he accepted, and I think relatively quick he accepted. And I think they were going to have William Holden maybe being the first one if he didn't accept. And a few other top actors, a couple of them turned it down. I think William Holden turned it down, or he was working on something else, but he was in the second one. I mean, after you see the success of the first one, you should get on board for the second. I think that's what happened, if memory serves me right. Really good movie. There's rumors about curses on the film and different things that happened to different actors and members of the crew when they were filming this. For example, when Gregory Peck used to have dinner at this one place regularly, I think it was in England, because they were filming in England, I believe. And he decided not to go that day, and then the IRA blew up the restaurant that he usually went to, if I'm getting that story right. I could be wrong, but that's what I think I heard on this Omen Curse documentary that was on YouTube. It was actually a long time ago. I think it might have ran on AMC years ago that I'd seen. Curse of the Omen or something like that. But and they were originally going to call the Omen the Birthmark. The name of the movie was supposed to be The Birthmark, but they changed it to The Omen. What a classic. The score sets the mood right at the beginning. It's like, wow, it gets your attention. Scary. The concept of the little boy being the Antichrist. No choice. And I mean, in the Bible, it calls him, if you believe those are passages are talking about the Antichrist, like in 2 Thessalonians 2, it calls him the son of destruction, son of perdition, which you can kind of interpret it as either he causes destruction or he's just doomed to be destroyed one day, but before that he causes destruction. That's another way to look at those passages. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Then of course in Daniel chapter 12, 11, 11, and other chapters, book of Revelation. There's different interpretations about those passages. But the Omen Part 1, and none of the Omen films really follow the Bible that closely, but they're scary. They do a good job for what they are. I think they're three classics, the original Omen, 1, 2, and 3. They have a mystique about them. They're kind of high class horror movies, the way they're done, the way they're directed. All three, I think, have solid good acting by good actors, and they're movies that are meant to be taken serious. I took them serious when I was a kid. They were the only ones that scared me. Omen 1, 2, and 3. And Omen, the first one, still is my scariest horror movie of all time. But I have to say, Omen 1, 2, and 3 are almost equal to me in terms of being scary. But I put the first one as number one because I think, it started it all. And I think it was the best of the three in terms of the acting, the production, and all that, although I love all three of them. I put Omen 1 as number one, even though I think they're pretty close, in my opinion. Omen number 1 is my favorite, or I should say, this is not a list of my favorite horror movies, but this is the scariest horror movie of all time to me, The Omen. And if you haven't seen these movies and you're interested in these types of horror movies, you're in for a heck of a ride because they are scary. To me, it's not going to affect everyone the same. Some people think The Exorcist 1 are much scarier than these. Some might think Chainsaw is the scariest movie of all time, or Poltergeist, or some of the others, or Jaws. But these are my 5 scariest horror movies of all time. Hope you enjoyed this video, and this has been the late night review. Please like and subscribe. I do all the editing myself. I work alone. I do all this, the intros, the outros, everything in the middle. So if you subscribe, it really makes my hard work feel like it's paying off. So thank you for watching. This has been the late night review, and have a good night.